Okay, we're on.
Welcome everyone to our class on Sefer Higayon by Rav Moshe Chaim Lusato. Welcome everyone to our class on Darkei Gemara by Rav Yitzhak Konfenton. In this siman, Rav Yitzhak Konfenton is telling us about the ways that people debate in the Gemara. And here he's explaining to us Hatfisa sheyitfos hamitvakeach lechavaro yeh be'echad mishmei ponim. The attack on the opponent in the Gemara happens in two ways. O ba'omer lo shema omer or shema she'omer hu hefech haemes, or he proves, where he says to him, what you're saying is untrue. O ba'omar shehu mutar v'kafel ve'en bo chiddush. Or he says what you're saying is pshita. So there's the two attacks. The classic attack, of course, is contradiction, a stira, saying what you're saying is wrong. Or the other one is pshita, like masha, there's no chiddush. Now the person who's on the attack always has the burden of proof. He has to have very strong proof that the other person is wrong. He can't say, well, maybe what you're saying, maybe the text that you're saying doesn't mean that. You can't bring a kasha from maybe. It has to be a kasha from a vadai, because someone's bichavar alavaraya. Have to be very positive, powerful proof. And also, if you say something that's irrelevant, you have to prove your point. That we learned it already. Okay, there's no sense saying it. Okay, the other way of this is in the Masav Mamatan of the two people debating. The way to extricate yourself from an attack is by an akimta. We learned in Kimta. Kimta means that you change the context that the statement was said in. So he says in Kimta, Shemamid umokim b'shum mamra or mishnah or brisa hem beis hem echad b'shnei derachim. Whenever an Kimta is made, usually as a response to an attack, there's two types of Kimtas. He explained. O b'derech dafka, rotz lomar she'oso mamra eino medaber ela be'inyanahu b'levad. The statement looks to be general, but you say, no, it's only talking about a particular instance. And that's how you escape yourself, or you get out of the problem. O b'derech afilu, that the statement doesn't mean dafka, it means even. Rotz lomar. The statement looks to be particular, which is a problem to you, and you say, no, the statement is not particular. It means even that, af. So you can make an akimta by saying what looks to be general is not, dafka, or what looks to be specific is really general, by using the mechanism of af. It means even. Ela afilu gam also inyan odose kolel. Ba'al ha'echad omru atalmud dafka katane o dafka nakat. When the Gemara wants to tell us that, makes an akimta in the case, and it's talking about only a specific case and can't go any further. It says dafka katani or dafka nakat. And the second one, when it says the case really is inclusive, it says lo mi boy koma. Not only that case, which is not said, but this case. We said there was a lo zu afsu, a zu ring tzrich lo marsu. But the lo zu afsu means not only that, but even this other case, a filu. Okay, so it looks like the case is specific, and it's telling you no, it's not specific. The case that's left out didn't have to be said, but it is there. Now he says, the Sholem Meishiv Yidabru Be'echad Mibeis Panim. When a person asks, of course, in the Sholem Meishiv, the give and take in the Gemara happens two different ways. One is Kafi Svaraso Shitaso. You can ask a kasha according to your own shita, or Kafi Svaras Shitas Mik Shenegdo. Or you're asked the kasha according to the shita of the person who you're trying to attack. Hainu. What does that mean? Damrinin bekamam duchtin, l'devreham the rabbanan komar lahu. He was speaking in terms of the rabbanan. This is an example of, he's not talking to his own shita, but he was speaking in the terms of the rabbanan. When he asked the kasha, he was asking not according to his own shita, but according to the rabbanan, the other people who were arguing the sugya. Or if you want to, here's it spelled out. According to my sheet, I have no problem. But according to you, you are in hot soup. Okay, so those are two examples of talking or asking a kasha based on the other person's shita. He says, wow, that's pretty interesting. Sometimes a person will say one statement and say just the opposite somewhere else. The Omru al-Zeb Talmud, of course, contradiction. The Talmud might say, or Didei, or the Rabbe. The first opinion was his own, and the second contradictory opinion was his rabbi's. So you always have to be careful to ascertain whether the person who is asking the kasha is asking it according to his own shita or just according to the shita of his opponent. So that's the end of his little discussion on the people who are actively involved in the debate. Now this chapter, Hey, is extremely important. In Hey, he's going to explain to us how to learn dinim from the Torah. Very, very powerful move here. He says like this, if I ask you, how do we know the laws from the Torah? How do we derive them? So
well, you have the 13
sources. Oh, exactly. The 13.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But there's also something called svara chitzon. So let's see what he says. He says, O mitzad svara, listen to what he says here. Rotze lomar ki haseichel gozer liot kain. Svara in his world means that the seichel is machayev. And that's, now, for instance, well, you'll have to spell that out first. What does it mean, the seichel is machayev? Okay, that's the svara chitzona. So then why does the Torah have to say it? Let's see what he says. The second way is not svara, but he says kasav. So there's two ways. Either it's svara, which means seichel, or it's written in the Chumash. That's it. Let him spell it out. What does it mean? Written in the Chumash. Ratzani, that means Rotze Lomar. Shemodia osam lono hakasav. It's written or made known to us, a pasuk directly or by some remez. So you either learn things by svara or because the kasav says it clearly or through a remez. Now, what type of remazim are there? V'haremez, o sheyeh mitzad hakesher, o hasmichus. Okay, so what's the kesher and smichus? What's the meaning of kesher and smichus? So a kesher is like a Gezerah Shavah, and a smichus is because one pasuk is next to the other. Okay? O mitzad yitur haloshen me'os of teva. So when things are written, when we learn things from the Torah itself, it's either because it's there in black and white, or because there's a remes to it, because there's a kesher between one thing and the other, like a Gezer Shava, or that one thing follows the next. It's called smichus. We can learn. Those are ramazim that put the two things together. Or because there's an extra word, an extra letter, extra, okay? So anything extra we can also learn. That's called all things that are written in the Torah. Okay? Now, let's just jump down here because he's going to go through a very important breakdown there. Limidus hadin v'hayufusos minose v'nose v'derek svara hu be'echad mishnei dvarim. What does he mean by svara? He says there's two ways to learn a law from one case to the next. Okay? B'derek svara. He says, oh, mi mishnah lemishnah, rotz lamar, shnei nosim shavim. So he holds a mamatzinu, that's what he holds a svar is, okay? It means, and he says that's the seichel. If two things are equal to each other, then they must have the same din, okay? O shneihem chomorim, or they're equally chomer, o shneihem kali. Okay, so for him, a mamatzinu is seichel, right? Or a kal v'chomer. He also holds that's a svara. Okay, so when he said seichel, that's what he means. Okay, we'll get into that later, but let's go back to learning from Pesukim. Okay, so whenever you learn from something written, and in other words, you're not making a dimyon al-pi logic. Logic means the two cases are similar, or they're both equally kal, equally chomer. That's what he calls all sorts of. That's what he calls using your seichel, as opposed to things being mafurish written. Okay, so now listen to this. When things are mafurish written, what does he say? It could be a remez, it doesn't matter, but it means it's there, black and white. He says, "Leolam keshehutzrich hakasav lavo lahodianu hadin." Hu ba'avor ki mitzad hasvara michutz hainu omrim behefech. He says, whenever a pasuk has to come to teach you a din, it's because you would have said logically, outside reasoning, that it should have been the opposite din, right? The Torah says on Shabbos you should rest. Excuse me. On Shabbos, you shouldn't do work. The Svar Chitzona was, why not? It's just a normal day in the week. Correct? If the Svara says you shouldn't take ribbis from Jewish people, you'll say, why not? Money is just another commodity. What's it? I sell potatoes, I sell money. Why not? Right? And definitely if putting on tefillin and all those hukim, there's no reason why you would do that in your whole life. So he says whenever a pasuk comes, whether it's mafarish or meremes, it's because you would have thought in simple svara the opposite. Now he wants to prove the point. Ki im emes hadavar shahasvar mi b'chutz v'kasav. If the truth would be that your simple understanding and the written case were exactly the same, why does it have to? Why does that be written? Lishtok kro ma'kamashma. Let the pasuk be quiet. I'll know that anyway. Pasuk doesn't have to tell me the sky is blue. Doesn't have to tell me Avraham Avinu has two eyes. Beshita. Umitzad svara nilmad also. I could learn this mitzad svara. Since the Torah went out of its way to write it, because of Lane wrote it, Eino Ela Mipnei, one. It's because Kimitzad Svartenu wrote Salamar Smar B'yichutz, O Be'echad Mishlosh Esrei Midu Sha'Torah Nidreshes Behen Hainu Omrim Lehefech. Ulahotzi me also Svara Uya Bo HaKasev Lamido Al Dav Emes. This has to be studied carefully, okay? It's this basic rule that he's always telling us about, which is we do not accept Peshita. We do not accept the fact that the Torah is telling us things that we would know even without the Torah. Okay? So let's go through that. Okay.
He doesn't mention it, but the Gemara does at times ask, V'lam likra svarahu. Why do you need...
Exactly. Okay.
And so...
Exactly. Plus exactly.
Right. Rabbi Victor Miller mentions that in conjunction with explaining that seichel, pure seichel, is Torah itself, and that's why you could learn Torah from somebody just writing on their own. It's still considered Torah because seichel and Torah are one and the same.
What do you mean you could learn Torah from someone writing on its own? What's that mean?
No, if somebody writes a sefer from his own seichel, a lot of what we have is the Chachamim wrote halachas, or they wrote. It's not all for halacha Moshe Sinai. It's not all necessarily. Some of it is just svaros that they came up with, gedarim, and when you're learning that, you're still mekayim the mitzvah of learning Torah. So let's say you could be learning about Purim, right? Purim is something which is totally from Divrei Chachamim. If you're learning the halachas of Purim, are you mekayim limud Torah or not? So you are, because it's from the seichel, and the seichel and Torah are one and the same.
Very interesting. I think about all these wonderful things. Okay, so the Torah here, I mean, you're saying very deep things. I have to really consider them. I can't just,
Right, okay, I don't know if I said exactly over the way he said it. I have to listen to the tape again, but it's, I think that was the idea.
No, I understand. There's a whole thing about whether Svara is called a rice or not.
Right.
In other words, if the pasuk doesn't mechare something, but it's true, I'll be Svara, does it have it in the rice? I heard someone said it does have it in the rice. Okay, but I'm not going to get that deep into it. What he says here is that when you have a pasuk, it's because the Svara Chitzana would say the opposite. That's his first move. Like you said, Svar Lam Likro, and that's his proof is Svar Lam Likro. It's actually Lishto Kro Mine. Why do I need a pasuk if I could learn that in, without the pasuk? Now that may have the din deraisa, could be, but because it's Svara. I mean, but the point here is that the pasuk only comes, according to him, to say the opposite of what you would have thought. If not, so it doesn't have to be written. That's what he says. So he explains it. He says. So no, he says like this. He says, why does the pasuk come? He says either because of a simple logical svara without writing the Torah, or look what he says. One of the shloshes rei midos, shetar nishreshevahen, you would have said the opposite. So the Torah has to come to mahapech, either a svara chitzona or something you would have derived from the shloshes rei midos. Because if you could derive it from the shloshes rei midos, like a binyanav or a kal v'chomer, so then the Torah doesn't have to say it, correct? Why does it have to say it for? Use the shloshes rei midos, and derive it, right? This is a very powerful thing. So he says the Torah has to talk when you could not have generated it logically, either because it's a svara chitzona, something that you don't need the Torah to. It's a natural. It's a proof of mitzvah teva, either whether it's muskal or not, but it's a proof mitzat teva, or it's something that you would have derived from the Shlosha Srei Midos. Kal v'chom and Binyanav, you already derived it already, so then the Torah has to come to tell you don't derive it through one of those Shlosha Srei Midos, Pradim, Klal Pradim, Klal, any of them. So if you would have used any one of the rules of the Torah, you would have come to the X result, and the Torah has to say, now I'm going to tell you it's not X. Okay? So that's why it has to be written to Mahape, either a Svara Chitzono, or some derivation you would have learned from Shlosh Srei Midos. Okay? Now he gives a conditional statement here, the Tanai. He says, that's Dafka Kesha Svara Midachutz, he Svara Muchrachas, it should be. Excuse me, Eno Muchrachas, of which Kiyesh Bo Ponim Lakan Lakan. He says like this. That's true. Let's read this carefully. What's the question of the text here? Dafka Kesha Svara Midachutz, he Svara Eno Muchrachas. Ki yesh bo ponim lekan o lekan, az yavo hakasav lekayim oso, kedei lesalik atzmeinu min hasafek. I think you have to read it without the brackets. It says like this. When, let's see what he says here. When the Svarim Yibachutz, no, excuse me, that's wrong. Again, you do read it with the Ain.
I would say with the Ain because he's saying that.
What happens if the Svarim Yibachutz? Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, because he's saying Ki yesh ba panim lakan lakan. He's explaining that that it has the ability to read it one way or to understand it one way or the other way. That is an explanation of Ein Muchrachas.
Right. So now, what does that mean, though? Let's get to the import of it. He's saying, he just told you that the Torah always comes to say the opposite of what you would have thought, right?
Right.
Correct? Now he's going to say there's one case where it does not come to tell you the opposite of what you would have thought. Sometimes it'll tell you what you would have thought when what you would have thought is a svara that's not mukhrach.
Right.
You could have thought A or B. So by saying A, it really is repeating what you would have thought. But you could have also thought B, right?
Right.
So whenever there's a suffix in the svara chitzona, that means it's not mukhrach, the Torah then will come and repeat one of the sides.
Right.
Okay? Kamo shomru, milta de asva kal v'choma tarfa kasav l'kro. Like sometimes it says, something that you could have derived from a kal v'chomer, the Torah will still go out of its way and repeat it. Why? Ba'avor ki a kal v'choma eino kol kach svara mukhrachas. Since the kal v'choma is not 100% mukhrach, ki efshel yos lo pircha b'tzad ma, because you could have possibly had a pircha, so the Torah will come and repeat it. Sounds familiar?
Yeah.
Remember Agamara and Bava Kama. Agamara and Bava Kama, the first Mishnah. The Mishnah, the kasha of the first Mishnah was, why do I need Shor, Bor, Mav, and Heber?
Right.
Let me learn one from the other.
Right.
And even if it was Bor that was given, so if Bor was inanimate, it doesn't move, so certainly all the other ones. But you could answer, right, Bolshekim, you could answer, no, the answer is, could be, that even though it could have been learned from a Kal V'chomer, the Torah had to write it. Why? Because maybe you wouldn't have learned it. Again, let's learn even better. The whole problem, it says, lo hari hashor kahari amava lo mave hari hashor, which means that, and yet the Gemara at the Mishnah at the end said there's a tzad shavashav hen shedarkin lahazik u'ishmiras and alecha, right? So there is a common quality between the shor and the mava, that they're all dark and lahazik, right? But since they have this unique quality, you may not have learned from the common quality, you may have learned from the unique quality. So the Torah had to repeat it because it wasn't so clear that you should learn from the lower LCD. So let's say it only wrote Karen, right? So you could have said, well, Karen is just an example of a darkened Lahazik, and therefore I can bring all the other Nezikins, correct? Or you could say, no, maybe the fact that it has Kavanah Lahazik makes it more Chomer than all the other ones. So since there's a suffix on how you would learn the Hezek of Karen, the Torah had to say the other Nezikin, because each one has a certain Chomer that you might have thought was the Sibas Achiv of the Din, when really it's not. The Sibas Achiv of the Dinning is really that it's dark and Lahazik. You have to just watch things that are dangerous, right? But since you might have thought that the Siba was the Chumras, so then the Torah had to write all of them. So here's an example, I just brought an example there, that when there's a doubt in the Svar Chitzona, either because of the Kal V'chomer or because it's shuckle which way to go, you have two good Svaras, whether you should learn from the lower denominator of Darken Lahazik or the higher one of Kavanah Lahazik. If there's anytime there's a doubt in the Svar Chitzona, then the Torah has to repeat one of the two sides. So although the first rule is that the Torah always says the opposite of what you would have thought, and here you would have thought A, but since you would have thought also B, the Torah has to tell you A again. Okay? Is that clear?
Yep.
Did I lose
Yes.
you?
No, I'm here.
I lost you.
No, I'm here.
Okay, but did I lose you on that?
No.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's just okay. Very good. Good. Fine. So let's go back. Now he says, what happens in the worst case scenario? What happens is kesha hasvara midachos imukrachas. You're right. You see, it has to be in a mukrachas in the one before. What happens if the svara midachos is mukrach? You would definitely say A. Ubo hakosav gam ken lakaimo. Comes along the pasuk and says exactly what you would have thought. We said that can't be. No, if that ever happens, as vadai labo hakosav elav mamayet. So now it comes to mamayet. Lo madafka bezeh hanosei ubezeh hamakom lidon hasvara hazos aval lo benosei zuloso v'indomalo. It comes to tell you now, since it repeated what you would have known, it comes to tell you from now on, it can only apply to the specific case written, and you cannot extend it to any other case, even if it's comparable. Why? Because since it didn't have to write in the subject, because you would have known it already, either from the swarm because you're another suffix, then the pasuk has to come to mamayit. Kamosh honor omrim bakam duchte, as we see in many places, ukiyotze bezeh, kasher kasav bo miyutar, when a pasuk comes extra, in eno inyan lezeh, tenu inyan acher, lezeh. O sha'anu omrim b'kiyotze bezeh, shnei kesugin abayim ke'echad ein malamdim. Now, let's go over that slowly. So what he says is like this. If you have a Svara Chitzona or another pasuk, and comes the Torah and repeats itself, so then it came to repeat itself in order to limit. So for instance, the Pnei Yeshua wanted to learn our Mishnah in Nezikin that if it were true, hypothetically, that bor was equal to maveh, so then we couldn't learn anything from it. Not the other Nezikin, and not any of the Toldos either. Of course, since you would have known Shor from Mava, let's say, so then any time, then no longer can you learn a cloud of if something is dark and Lahazik, then you have to pay. It would be limited to those cases and only the cases that were written Meforish. That's if they were indeed equal. Now the Mishnah says that they're not equal. So there's a tzad, we said, as a suffix, so I had to clarify it. But, but if they really were equal to each other, so then we'd say only the cases mentioned and no other cases, no derivatives, that's it. Okay?
Right.
So when the Torah repeats what you would have known, whether Svarim B'Chutza from another pasuk, it's always a limitation, and then from now on, you cannot extend that rule anymore. We had a problem there also with Shavakesef, right? I don't know if you ever learned that Gemara. But there's a problem with Shavakesef, whether Shavakesef can be used as kesef in Nezikin or even in Kedushin.
Right.
Because if it Tosus has a whole big problem at the beginning of Kedushin because it's mentioned twice, and it's no longer a svar anymore. You have to have a mafurish pasuk. So whatever it is, that's the rule. When the Torah repeats a svar chitzona or something you would have derived from the Shlosh Esrei Midos, then from now on it comes as a limitation. Okay? That's what he says. Now this little piece here, why does he say this little problem? When the pasuk is extra, because you would have known it, so then we're forced to say, that's a big chiddush, right? When we see that a pasuk repeats something that we would have known already, so they say, well, it didn't come for itself, it came for another did. You must have known, of course. Too bad. I should have linked to really the cases that they say that. Or more classically is what we just said, because we can't have repetition. So if there is repetition in the pasuk, so it has to come to Mamayit. So it's either, the pasuk has three functions so far. The main function is to say the opposite of what you would have thought, correct? That's function number one. Function number two is to machriya suffix. If you would have thought two things, or it's not clear which way to go, the Torah can repeat what you would have known, because what you would have known would be in doubt. That's number two. And number three, if it really does repeat a svara muchrachas, so then it comes to mamayit. That's the third thing. Okay? Those are the three. That's what this is a foundation piece in learning. Like everybody should learn this book. There's just a lot of Agnes Nefesh would.
Yeah, it gives you.
Right? That's very clear statement.
No, it's right. It really puts it in the right perspective.
So now when you come, and now you'll see what kashas are based on. You see, it's not mystical. You just now you'll see. We'll either ask a kasha, we learned that already, or we'll be forced to say there must have been a suffix here. Okay. Now he says, here's two ways that the Gemara works when it's learning dinim. Very, very important. Ha'echad mehem shamarnu. One, which we have said, which is mi de itztirich legalui hacha shmamine heichad de galui galui heichad de lo galui lo galui. The first rule is, as we said, since the pasuk had to reveal its din in this specific case, we hear from this a limitation. Only where the Torah said the din does it apply, and we cannot move it to any other place. The second way that the Talmud learns out is just the opposite. It says, Mi de galui hacha galui lakola Torah kula. From the fact that the Torah revealed its din in this case, we now extend it everywhere else. He says, Kinira l'chorish shehem shnei devarim hefchim. He says, wait a minute, this is crazy. In one case, you say the Torah reveals a din in a case, and it means here and only here. And in the other hand, you say the Torah is revealing a din in a case, and it extends. So make up your mind. How do we know where a case is a limitation and where is an extension? That's a very important thing to know, correct? He said one of the things you have to know is it mamayet, here and only here, or is it marva? Does it go everywhere? How do you know? How does it work? So he's going to explain it now. He says, these looks like two different principles, extension and limitation. One denies the other one. Do Torah comes to extend or does it come to limit? Omnam hatamhu ki. Here's the two things. Keshanu amrim mida itztibali hacha. Which one is it? Hacha the gilui, hacha the gully, low gully. The one of limitation. Hu kasher gluya kasav benose shehu mi'at chidish. Obenose she asvara daibo komono. Va'az va'adai nema lobo kasav elamamayet. So what is the simonim? No, is it wrong? What are the simonim of when do we say that a pasuk comes to mamayit? Okay? In other words, since the Torah revealed itself here, it means here and only here. Okay? So he says it's when the pasuk, when the Torah reveals its law in a case which is a miut chiddush. That means, what does that mean, a miut chiddush? If it told you there's an Iser in a Kohen, right? So that is less of a chiddush than if it told you there was an Ish in a Levi or Yisrael, correct?
Right.
So the fact that it told you there's an Iser in the smaller chiddush, which is the Kohen, comes to tell you that the Iser only exists in the Kohen and nowhere else.
Okay.
Okay? That's why I picked the littlest chiddush. If the din was to extend to a larger class, then it should have had the din revealed in
the larger
Levi
one,
or the Israel,
right?
And then I would have known kol came up the scale. So by making the chiddush in the smaller chiddush, which is the one we would expect to have the most isurim, i.e. the Kohen, it comes to tell you mid itzrich legalui hacha hacha legalui gali hacha lo gali lo gali. It's a limitation. Okay.
Right.
The second way sign of a limitation is when it's megalad din benose shasvara dai bo kamonu. As we mentioned, when it says it in a case where the svara chitzona or another, or to learn from anywhere else would have come to the same din. As vaday nema lobo kasav elo mayet veloma dafka bezeh hanosi velo bechavero afilu domalo. Kol shekain shehem yod etzamimen. Right? The lo tema hachi l'shto kromine. So he says like this. Another sign of limitation is when the svara repeats what you already would have known, either, as he said, misvara chitzona, or from another one of the 13 midos. So by repeating what you already know, it comes now mamayit. Like he said, shnei pesukim v'ayim b'yachad in lamdin, right? It says now, dafka, in this no-say, and in no other no-say, even if the no-say now in logic is doma to it, we do not extend. Okay?
Okay.
So that's the second. The first one is the miyut chiddush, revealing the din only in the Kohen. And the second one is repeating what you would have known from the Svarah Chitzon or another pasuk. So then, Shnei Pesukim Baga Ein Melamdim means it's here and nowhere else. Even though in logic you may want to extend it, we're not allowed to. Okay?
Right, so this is similar to, it's the same idea. The thinking would be the same when the Svarah is Bachutz is Mechrachas. And then you have the pasuk coming to tell you to anyway. It's only to Mamayit. Here too, he's saying when you have
no, that's exactly what he's saying.
Oh, he's saying the same thing as over there. Okay.
100%.
Right.
he's just giving a list. The first way is the miyut chiddush. The second is what he explained before, that the svar b'chutz is exactly what you would have thought, right? Exactly, as you said, right? You would have known that
Right.
already. So why does it come to repeat it? Now it's a limitation, and you cannot learn it to any other case, even Sinor. Okay? Beseder? And kol sheken, you can't learn it in a case that's weird. That's why. And what's the proof? Lishto krominei. Okay? If really it was supposed to be a general rule, why does it have to be repeated? I would have learned a general rule, let's say, from Karen. I could learn it all over the place. So why does it have to be repeated? If indeed Karen was equal to Shane and Regels, then the repetition would have meant only a limitation because I don't need it. Okay, you with me? I went too fast.
No, that's fine.
It's very simple. Either immediate chiddush or repetition. That's it. That always signs a limitation. Okay? O, yomer zeh hadin v'chavaro sheyesh bo yoter chiddush mimenu v'ana aminan mikol shechen b'zeh hanosei shehu miyut chiddush. Here's the case. He said, look, if the truth was the Easter was with the Yisrael, right? So the Torah should have said the case of Yisrael, and I would have known kol shechen the Kohen. So since it said the Easter is only to the Kohen, I know it's limited to the Kohen and nowhere else. Correct? That's an example of miyut chiddush.
Right.
So repetition and miyut chiddush is always a sign of limitation. Now, what about the sign of expansion? Keshe anu omrim, when we say mida goli lakol haTorah kulo, expansion, zehu kasher golui hakasav bo benosei biyuchad, she'osei din hu chiddush gadol bo. Not the miyut chiddush, but it tells you the greater chiddush. Ad ki imole mikra hakasav iv shalom akain. If it wasn't the chiddush of the pasuk, I would have never said something. Ki hasvara minagedes hilo, because svara tells me against it. So now, once it tells me the din, the greater chiddush, ba'az mikol shekain nilma mimeno l'shar hanosim. Now I can learn it to all other things which are similar. So in other words, if the Torah would mechadesh a din in Yisrael, which is tremendous, an Easter, let's say, an Easter in Yisrael, right? So I would say the fact that it picked the Yisrael, which is a great chiddush, right? It didn't limit the chiddush to a Cohen or a Levi. So now I know mikol shekain, I can learn it everywhere else without a limitation, up the scale. And he says even sideways too. Why not? Anything that's equivalent to Israel. I don't know about a ger, that would be interesting, but it should go, all along. Anything to equal or greater than that. Okay? V'gam zeh, he gives a condition. V'gam zeh dafka keshe'oso hadin yenose al hanosu taimo v'taimo galu limono. He says, be careful. What I just said when the Torah is mechadesh in a great chiddush, like in Israel, that you can extend it everywhere else, that's only when the din is based on reason, logic, on reason is better, on like common sense, let's say. Yeah. Omnam, imhu derech knas, but if it's not common sense, it's a knas. So we have a rule, ein lilmod mimenu lenose acher. You can never learn a kanas to any case. Why? Ki begezeres hakasav. It's a gezeres hakasav. V'az nema chidishu u'michidish lo elfina. Since it's a chiddush, we have a rule. It's unique. And a chiddush is lo elfina. What does it mean? Ki choka melechu. It's just Hashem decides that that's the din. And you can only learn in the case that it was mechadesh. So, for instance, the din of chetzi nezek, one person says it's a kanas. It's a machlok, it's a kanas. But if it's a kanas, really shouldn't pay anything. You shouldn't pay anything, because the tam normally doesn't do damage. And this is like you're not really obligated to watch your animals. They're really quite innocuous. So the fact that it gored the first time, is not your responsibility. Comes along the Torah and gives a kanas, and it says, you're going to have to pay half because we want you to start thinking about protecting or watching this animal, even though you're not obligated yet, but still, since he did damage, we're going to give you a kanas, which means in the svara, you shouldn't pay anything. But the Torah wants to give you a kanas. Now, once it's a kanas, the rule is you can never learn kanasot because it's a chiddush. Really, in svara, you would say zero. So it's a big chiddush din to say you have to pay half. So therefore, you can't learn that to any other place because that's a gezeres hamelech. Hashem decided that that's what he wants, but you can't learn that din to any other case. Okay?
Yeah, but you have to understand that it's only because it's a kanas. Because in Beis he's saying that it's a big chiddush, and therefore you should learn that everywhere else.
Yeah, but only exactly. But that's what he says here.
Right. So he's saying over here because this is a kanas, that's why you can't learn that everywhere else.
Right. Exactly. Because the kanas is a gezeres hamelech. I mean, there's no logic to it. I mean, there is a logic because Hashem wants you to wake up. I mean, there's no such thing as common sense. So it's only where Hashem puts the kanas in that you can say it exists. You can't just spread it all over the place. Okay, so that's a modification. Now, let's go a little wider. Ukasher omrim, ukishano omrim, midagoli hachigoli lekol Torah kula. When we say it's an expansive din, zehu kasher goli rekasav bo benose miyuch. 1 second. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I read that. I'm sorry. That was a kanas, right. Exactly. Okay. Now, he gives examples. Okay. For instance, v'zehu kagon shloshim shkolim shel eved, o tashlumei dalad vehei, right, in Ezekiel, o chamishim shkolim shel motzei shemra. All these things are kanasos, so you can never learn kanasos. That's a total chiddush of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and you can never extend those kanasos anywhere else. Okay, so let's go a little further now. Now he's going to, so that was his. Maybe we should review that, and we'll do next time. We'll do the svara. Okay, let's review that. It's worthwhile reviewing. I should have really made a chart here. Okay, let's review. He says there's two ways that you learn dinim. Either from svara, which means a seichel is mechayev, and for him that meant, we went further, that if two cases are equal in svara, so the din should go from one to the next. It's a logical progression. Okay, or a kal v'chomer, he holds all those kal v'chomer, he also holds it's logical. Okay, means your mind logically could produce the result. Now, if your mind can't produce the result, so then we have the other alternative, which calls gezeres hakasa. The Torah has to come. Now, he explains that the Torah has to come either it's written clearly or by one of the ramazim, which is kesher, smichus, or an extra word. Okay, now he says like this. Here's the important rule. Let's see if we can get the levels. Okay, the first level is the Torah comes to say the opposite of Svar Chitzona. That's what we always expect. Okay, that's level number one. But he says that's only true. Sometimes the Torah can repeat a Svar Chitzona if there's two possibilities in this. There's a suffix in the Svar Chitzona, right?
Right.
That's B. Now, he says, if, however, there's no suffix, and the Torah does repeat itself, which it's not supposed to do, so then it comes as a limitation. It's a miyut. Okay? Just like Shnei Pesukim Ba'an Yachadim Melamdeh. The repetition is always a miyut. Okay. Good. And then he explains like this, that how do we recognize when we see a din that's machadish in a pasuk, whether it's limited or is it expansive? So he gives us the key. Okay, and he says these things, it looks like it's arbitrary, but it's not. So he says the limitations always come when you would have known it from Svarah Michutz or another pasuk, right? So the repetition always is a sign of limitation. Or b'miyut chiddush, when the Torah tells you in the least Chiddush. In other words, the Cohen is the least Chiddush of Cohen, Levi, and Yisrael. So by Machadesh in the Cohen, an Easter, let's say, it's telling you only Cohen and nowhere else. Okay. Now, if it wants to be expansive, so then of course it'll tell you in the larger Chiddush. So if it tells you the Levi, or the Yisrael, so then you'll go up the scale. And the third thing he says is, this doesn't work with Kanas. With a Kanas, no matter if it's Mechadesh, even in the lower scale of, say, Kanas is given to Yisrael, you can never extend it anywhere else. Because Kanasos are only where they said and nowhere else. That's the thing. So that's his lineup. And next week, Bezrat Hashem, we'll go into Svara. But like I said, this is a critical chapter in learning. I mean, if you have this down, so then you're able to understand what's being done and why it's being done, and it just brings total light and, to the way that we learn. Instead of everything just being a gezeres hakasam, because everything is said and therefore it's said, we believe it. Of course we believe it, but you don't understand the mechanics of how you go from expansive to limitation. And this is a fantastic thing. So next week we'll move on to Svara. We'll explain how we learn from Svara, with the Mamatzino and Kal V'chomers. And Bezrat Hashem will become more and more conscious about our learning. Okay.
So everything fits into. So I mean, I guess everything fits into this. But like the Torah says, Lo Sirtzach. So without the Torah saying Lo Sirtzach, I thought that's like one of the things that you got to understand, that everybody knows you're not supposed to kill.
Right. So now this is a big machla. Now the way I answer that is, it always comes from prate dinim. Okay. It doesn't mean just to take a gun and shoot someone. It has a prate dinim. Must be it's a blood considered lo tzirtzach, however. We always have prate dinim. Okay. However, I read in like the Rabbeinu Bachaya, other people, they hold these things called mitzvahs sechlius. Now I don't think he holds that. I think that's a machlokas. He holds, you know what I mean? He holds that. He doesn't say it. I answer it. It must be coming from pratik. There has to be a chiddush in the din, like gazela and all these things. We have chidushim in the din,
Right.
Or nezikin, for instance, right? Nezikin, they say that the goyim don't have nezikin at all, because it's really onus, in a certain place. What did you do? It wasn't a direct cause. It was only a lack of shmir or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, he is of the opinion that the Torah comes to Mahabach Tzvara Chitzona.
Right.
Yet I read other people that say this thing called mitzvah sichlius, that the Torah says. So why does it have to write it if it's mitzvah sichlius? That's the kasha that he has.
Right.
It can't be. I mean, he says it can't be. It can't. No such things. I mean, it may be, a seichel in a broad sense, but not in a specific practice. Okay. Anyway, that was a very good question, and that's how I go through the parts of this thing.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going through a lot of important information.
Yeah, no, this is very good. This is really, just got to, it has to be reviewed, and a lot of stuff here.
Right. So we're doing rower. It's a lot of stuff, but without doing the rower, we'll never get through it. You know what I mean? So we'll get through it once, and then on the job training, you'll see it happening, and you'll refer back to the sefer, and you'll know that it's here, and that's the dynamic that happens.
Right.
I mean, there are people that just sit and memorize everything overnight. That have people that have
and we have the recordings.
And we have the recordings to go back over it.
Right.
But really, this sefer is, each one of these you see add a critical aspect to learning.
Right.
Now, without it, it becomes fuzzy learning, and we can convince ourselves we understand what we're saying, or we can misunderstand it or not understand, because we just don't have these basic tools. And when you have these basic tools, it adds such clarity. Now, they happen to be complex, because learning is from the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's not simple.
Right.
But it's not so, and that's what he says in the beginning, Tunos. It's not so far away from the human understanding that it's from Malachim. It's really, really the Picha V'Levcha. It's really right here. You just need someone to explain to you the moves, which Baruch Hashem, these people have done.
Right.
Fantastically. Okay. I wish more people would get access to it, but like you said, we have the recordings, and that's what Hashem. People will hear about the Sefer and actually use it. Well, we have that big thing, Bezrat Hashem, I told you Thursday we have a big event. It should be that the book will be published